The history of media in Mexico is a legacy of the country's rich and diverse cultural heritage. From the pre-Columbian period to the present day, Mexican media has played a vital role in shaping the country's social, political, and cultural narratives. The earliest forms of media in Mexico can be traced back to the pre-Columbian era, when indigenous peoples used a variety of communication methods, such as hieroglyphic writing, pictographs, and codices. These forms of media were essential for the preservation of cultural traditions, history, and beliefs. Following the Spanish conquest of Mexico in the 16th century, media in the country underwent significant changes. The introduction of printing technology by the Spanish colonial authorities marked a significant turning point in the development of Mexican media. The first printing press was established in Mexico City in 1539, and it played a crucial role in disseminating religious texts, such as the Catechism and the Bible, among the indigenous populations. During the 19th century, the Mexican media landscape underwent significant changes, as the country struggled to gain independence from colonial rule. The emergence of the first newspapers in Mexico during this period was instrumental in shaping public opinion and promoting nationalist sentiments. The Mexican Constitution of 1857, which guaranteed freedom of the press, also provided a powerful platform for the development of a vibrant media industry in the country. In the 20th century, Mexico experienced a period of significant economic growth and social development. The media played a crucial role in this process, as it enabled the dissemination of information and the exchange of ideas, helping to promote social and political change. The development of radio in the 1920s and television in the 1950s expanded the reach and influence of the media, making it an indispensable tool in shaping public opinion. During the 1970s and 1980s, the Mexican media industry experienced significant political pressure and censorship from the government. However, the 1990s saw the liberalization of the media industry, as policies were enacted to promote greater freedom and diversity of the press. Today, Mexico has a rich and diverse media landscape, with a range of radio, television, print, and digital media outlets. The impact of the country's colonial past can still be seen in some aspects of contemporary media, with a strong influence from the Spanish language and Catholic tradition. However, Mexico's media culture is also characterized by a strong sense of national identity, cultural diversity, and a commitment to political and social progress. Despite the challenges posed by factors such as organized crime and political corruption, the Mexican media remains a vital force in shaping public discourse and promoting civic engagement. The country's media outlets have demonstrated resilience in the face of adversity and a commitment to upholding the principles of democratic governance and free speech. Journalists in Mexico play a critical role in shaping public opinion and promoting democratic principles. Despite ongoing challenges such as censorship, corruption, violence, and intimidation, Mexican journalists persevere in their efforts to report on important stories and hold those in power accountable. The media in Mexico is known for its aggressive and courageous reporting style, often exposing corruption, human rights abuses, and injustices. However, journalists in Mexico face significant risks, including physical harm and even death. According to the Committee to Protect Journalists, Mexico is one of the most dangerous countries in the world for journalists, with at least 124 journalists killed since 2000. Despite these risks, Mexican journalists remain committed to their roles as watchdogs of democracy, often working in conditions of extreme danger to report on critical issues. They play a crucial role in holding government officials and public figures accountable, and in providing information that is essential for citizens to make informed decisions about their future. In conclusion, journalists in Mexico have a vital role in promoting freedom of expression, upholding democratic values, and providing information to the public. Despite significant challenges and dangers, they continue to fight for the right to report on important stories and hold those in power accountable. The history of media law in Mexico can be traced back to the country's colonial era, when censorship was used as a tool by Spanish colonial authorities to control the dissemination of information. Following the country's independence in the early 19th century, the first Mexican constitution was enacted in 1824, which guaranteed freedom of speech and the press. Over the course of the 19th and early 20th centuries, a number of laws were enacted to protect press freedom and to promote greater diversity and independence in the media industry. In the 1920s, the government established the Federal Radio Broadcasting Commission, CFR, and the National Cinematography Commission, CNC, to regulate broadcasting and film production. However, the mid-20th century was marked by increasing government. The Revolutionary Party, PRI, sought to centralize power and limit dissent. During this period, censorship and government interference in media coverage of political events was common. In the 21st century, Mexico has enacted a number of laws designed to promote transparency and accountability in the media industry, as well as to protect freedom of expression and the press. These include laws such as the Federal Transparency and Access to Public Government Information Law, and the Federal Telecommunications and Broadcasting Law. Despite these laws, Mexico remains a challenging environment for journalists, with corruption, violence, and impunity posing significant threats to press freedom. The country continues to rank among the most dangerous in the world for journalists, with numerous cases of harassment, intimidation, and violence against journalists reported each year. Here is a timeline of major media laws in Mexico. 1810 to 1821, during the Mexican War of Independence, there were no specific media laws in existence. 1824, the Constitution of Mexico enshrines the principle of freedom of speech and the press, guaranteeing citizens the right to express themselves and disseminate information without fear of censorship or retribution. 1873, the Ley de Imprenta, Printing Act, is passed, which aimed to regulate the printing industry in Mexico, and placed restrictions on the publication of certain types of material. 1917, the Constitution of Mexico is amended to provide stronger guarantees for freedom of the press, including the right to access information and protection for journalists. 1946, the Law on Press and Book Commerce was enacted, which established a licensing system for the press and allowed the government to shut down publications that were considered dangerous to public order. 1951, the Ley Federal de Impresa y Libros, Law of Print and Books, is enacted, which establishes strict regulations on the printing industry and limits freedom of the press. The law is criticized for placing significant restrictions on the disseminations of information. 1976, the federal government assumes control of all broadcast media, including radio and television, under the Federal Radio and Television Law. The law gives the government significant control over the content of broadcasts, with strict regulations on the type of programs that can be aired. 1985, the Law of Transparency and Access to Public Government Information was enacted, which established the right of citizens to access information held by government agencies. 1988, the Mexican Constitution is amended to strengthen protections for freedom of expression and the press. The amendment establishes the right to access information, and enshrines the principle of freedom of speech as a fundamental right. 1996, the Telecommunications Law was enacted, which established regulations for the telecommunications industry and created the Federal Telecommunications Commission. 2002, the Federal Transparency and Access to Public Government Information Law is passed, requiring government officials to disclose information about their activities, and providing citizens with greater access to information. 2006, the Law to Protect the Rights of Journalists and Other Media Workers was enacted, which established protections for journalists and other media workers against violence, threats, and attacks. 2012, the Ley General de Protección de Datos Personales en Posesión de Sujetos Obligados, General Law on the Protection of Personal Data Held by Obligated Subjects, is enacted, which aims to regulate the collection, use, and dissemination of personal data by government agencies and other organizations. 2013, the Federal Telecommunications and Broadcasting Law establishes the Federal Telecommunications Institute, IFT, to regulate the telecommunications industry and promote greater competition. Under the law, the IFT has the power to enforce regulations and impose fines on companies that violate them. 2014, the Federal Telecommunications and Broadcasting Law was enacted, which reformed the regulatory framework for telecommunications and broadcasting and established the Federal Institute of Telecommunications. There have been several new media laws in Mexico in the last 5 years. In 2018, the Law on Internal Security was enacted, which allows for the use of force by the armed forces in carrying out law enforcement duties. The law has been criticized by some who believe it could be used to suppress freedom of expression and justify human rights abuses. In the same year, the Law on Victims and Persons Affected by Crime was enacted, which seeks to protect the rights of individuals who have been victimized or affected by crime, including those who have been targeted because of their work in the media. Additionally, there have been several recent proposals and initiatives related to media laws in Mexico. For example, in 2020, the government proposed a new bill that would regulate social media, including requiring social media companies to store user data in Mexico and to provide data to the Mexican government, upon request. The bill has been criticized by some who believe it could be used to suppress political speech and violate users' privacy. Overall, media laws in Mexico continue to evolve and change, with ongoing debates about the balance between freedom of expression and other societal interests. 2021, a new national law on audio and video communication is proposed, which aims to provide a comprehensive legal framework for the regulation of radio, television, and digital media in Mexico. The law is designed to promote greater transparency and accountability in the media industry, and to protect freedom of expression and the rights of journalists. In conclusion, the history of media law in Mexico is a reflection of the country's unique political and social context, marked by periods of censorship, government control, and increasing efforts to promote transparency and accountability. While laws have been enacted to promote press freedom and protect journalists, significant challenges remain, and journalists in Mexico continue to operate in a dangerous and challenging environment.